Good afternoon and welcome to the National Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 daily briefing for the 16th of April 2020. I am Lesroy Williams. Thank you very much for joining us for today's briefing. We say a special welcome to the Honorable Sean K. Richards, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Youth and Sport. We recognize among us as well Superintendent Cromwell Henry, who is Divisional Commander for District A. We recognize also the Reverend Hilton Joseph, who is the Superintendent for the Moravian Church here in St. Kitts. We recognize Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, our Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Marissa Carty, who is PRO, the Ministry of Health. We also recognize Mr. Abdias Samuel, National Disaster Coordinator and the COVID-19 National Task Force Chair. We also recognize Mrs. Christmas Jacobs, who has been doing a fantastic job in terms of sign language. And a warm welcome to all of our media colleagues, everyone who has joined us today, both here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and those of you in the region and further afield. I would invite Reverend Hilton Joseph to start off for us with a spiritual sharing. Reverend Joseph.
Citizens and residents of the Twin Islands State of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, I greet you in the name of Jesus Christ and through the power of the Spirit of God, the same power which raised Jesus Christ from the dead, who now lives and reigns at the right hand of God the Father. This evening I stand here perhaps as a beacon of hope to offer words of encouragement and wisdom and to pray for our nation of St. Christopher and Nevis, the Caribbean, and the nations of the world. It would be remiss of me to stand today, 4 days after the celebration of one of the most phenomenal and life-transforming events ever to be recorded in the earth, and not give honor to what God has done. I'm referring to the Easter experience, the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. This event was not a hoax. Jesus was not resuscitated. It was a real historical event. Jesus rose from the dead. Jehovah God called forth his son Jesus out of the belly of the tomb to be heralded as the firstborn from the dead, to transform the world, to give humanity a chance at being better, to be the hope of the world, so that human beings can have confidence in one who is transparent, potentate, and omnipresent. I add the list of accolades of our God being omniscient, because our God was, is, and will continue to be very knowledgeable about COVID-19 and this present pandemic. He is as aware now as was when he allowed Jesus to be nailed to the cross, and yet was also very cognizant that Resurrection Sunday was in the forecast. Hence, even though we were locked in on Easter Sunday, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead on that resurrection morning 2,000 years ago knitted our spirits as we sang and proclaimed, "Up from the grave he arose, with a mighty triumph o'er his foes. He arose a victor from the dark domain, and he lives forever with his saints to reign. He arose, hallelujah, Christ arose." It was the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, who shared two tweets that caught my attention over the Easter weekend. On Good Friday, he stated, and I quote, "Good Friday is the darkest and most difficult day in the Christian story. but it's also the day that tells us something so important. No matter what we are going through, God is with us. On Easter Sunday, he said, even in this time of loss, we believe in life. Even in this time of darkness, we look to the light. Even in this time of isolation, we are loved by the God who is with us. Even in this time of fear, we can have hope as sure as stone. It is from this window of hope that the St. Kitts Evangelical Association and the St. Kitts Christian Council, in collaborative discussion with the COVID-19 Task Force, the NEOC, and the Commissioner of Police, have arrived at the decision that in light of the threat of COVID-19 and in order to avoid danger to our lives and the lives of our citizens and residents of our federation, that we will work in harmony with the guidelines established to prevent the spread or escalation of the spread of the coronavirus by 1. Observing the curfew established. We have taken all things into consideration and will err on the side of caution. Taking precautionary measures not to assemble in our churches, gather for any sessions of fellowship, because we can be exposed to persons who may have come in contact with or have been exposed unknowingly to COVID-19. Appealing to church leaders not to attempt to gather until the all-clear message is given. Acting on the awareness that if for any reason there is a need to visit their church facility, building, or premise for recording services, permission must be sought by application to the Commissioner of Police at hilroy.brandy@police.kn. As church leaders, we lead from the front, and by example to comply with the regulations and rules established by the CMO, NEOC, that no gathering, opening of churches for any reason except prior permission is granted by the Commissioner of Police. Therefore, all are encouraged to stay at home. Use any means of technology, for example, Zoom, Facebook Live, Skype, and YouTube, to minister and to stay in touch with members. Many church organizations around the region and the globe in general are doing this successfully. We have hope and faith in God and know that this too will pass. The SKEA and the SKCC have produced guidelines for churches to operate amid the COVID-19 pandemic. These have been prayerfully prepared and presented to churches to provide guidance on how to cope during these challenging times. Let us therefore be patient and protect lives and pray for the health and wealth of our federation. And I invite us wherever we are just to bow in prayer. Gracious and ever-living God, we give you the glory, the praise, and the honor as we acknowledge your sovereignty, as we acknowledge your lordship, as we acknowledge that you are indeed the Lord of the universe. We pray even now, God, for the forgiveness for the many who have taken lightly this pandemic and only are concerned about their own needs. We continue to pray, O God, for your deposit of godly wisdom on all who are at the forefront, that you will give them physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional strength at this time. And I declare over them, God, that you are their keeper. We pray for workers on the move against pandemic. We pray for the medical personnel, the military, police force, and all of the armed forces. We pray for pastors, God. We pray for counselors and religious leaders who provide psychological and spiritual guidance to those in need. Even now, God, we lift up all the essential workers who work to fight against COVID-19, like, God, the telecommunication industry, the retail services, financial institutions, mission groups, and the Red Cross. Even now, God, we lift up before you those who are having a difficult time coping with this lockdown. For families who are feeling the financial fallout of COVID-19 due to the loss of job, we pray that you, Almighty God, our Jehovah Jireh, will make a way. Send the Good Samaritan, God, to assist at this time. We also pray for our youth and children at this time who are overwhelmed, and we speak peace over them. Enable them to settle at home and focus on the educational packages that have been given to them for their edification. At this time, Father, we bring before you the family members of the frontline workers. We declare over them your word. We bring before you, God, families who are mourning. We bring before you, God, families who are dealing with persons who are sick, persons who have been affected, who are sick through to this virus and outside of the virus arena. We bring them before you now, God, and we declare from Psalm 121, you say, my help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Please note that the one who keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. He is your keeper. He is your shade upon your right hand. The Lord promises to preserve your going out and your coming in now and always. May the same Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead fill us and surround us at all time, exuding hope in these dark and uncertain days. May the blessings of the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be with us as a federation and the world. In Jesus' name we pray, and we all say, amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Joseph. I recognize among us the Honorable Wendy Phipps, Minister of State with responsibility for health. I now invite the Honorable Sean Richards, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Education, Youth and Sport, to address us.
Fellow citizens and residents, good day. Today, Thursday, 16th April 2020, I come once again to address you in my capacity as Minister of Education to reaffirm the Ministry of Education's commitment to ensuring the health and overall well-being of all who work and learn within our educational institutions. The national situation continues to change in response to the threat of COVID-19 pandemic, and the Ministry of Education remains very alert and responsive to this reality. This has necessitated some changes to the academic landscape. This address will therefore provide some pertinent information regarding the delivery of education in our nation in the upcoming weeks. We are all aware that the Easter break ends on Friday, 17th April 2020, and the academic calendar indicates that schools would reopen on 20th April 2020. However, the current realities have determined that it is not in the best interest of our students, teachers, and our nation for schools to reopen at this time. Our primary consideration has always been to make the best decision regarding education in the context of student and community health and safety in response to the threat of COVID-19. To this end, all educational institutions will remain closed in the first instance for a period of 2 weeks with effect from Monday, 20th April 2020. This was not an easy decision, but extending the closure of schools for a period of 2 weeks is in the best interest of our students, school employees, families, and by extension, the nation. This decision applies to all early childhood care and learning facilities, public schools, private and parochial church schools, and career and technical vocational centers. All colleges and universities shall also remain closed and may not resume in-person instruction or reopen their physical locations. All reopenings will be contingent on public health guidance provided by the Chief Medical Officer and the COVID-19 Task Force. This simply means we will all continue to observe the shelter-in-place, that is, stay-at-home orders issued by the government. Although on-site instruction in schools has been suspended for a period of 2 weeks, it is critical that our students continue to learn at home. Educational institutions can therefore continue with online virtual instruction for students. As a result, the Ministry of Education has taken the necessary steps to ensure that teaching and learning will continue for our students despite the extended school closure. The Ministry of Education's Curriculum Development Unit and Early Childhood Unit have organized a selection of educational materials, lessons, and activity suggestions to support continued education in the home. These are for learners at the early childhood, primary, and secondary levels. The educational resources were devised with input from our teachers. The work will be available for students. The work that will be available for students will be grade appropriate, and it will be in alignment with content from different subject areas that students covered in schools during the last school term. These locally structured and approved educational resources will become available on the Ministry of Education's website, www.education.gov.kn, as of Monday, 20th April 2020. The website will be intermittently updated with new content during this initial 2-week period of school closure. At this juncture, let me once again thank our principals, teachers, subject coordinators, and early childhood resource personnel for working to ensure that during this period of school closure, students are not without educational material to support their continued education while they are at their homes. Additionally, next week, all students in St. Kitts and Nevis will be issued a username and password which allow access to the Flow Study Platform, a website that provides for self-paced learning of content that is aligned with our primary and secondary school curricula. Using the Ministry of Education issued Flow Study username and password, students and their families are provided several benefits. 1. The registration process is simplified. 2. Technical support will be available from the ministry. And 3. Most importantly, activities completed by students on the site will be shared with schools and teachers to support students' return to learning in school. Kindly be informed that the school which your child or ward attends will share the registration information with families. Again, I must underscore the point that this initial 2-week period of school closure is necessary to protect our public health. Also, be mindful that should there be a need to extend school closures beyond this initial 2-week period, the Ministry of Education has given extensive thought to how the protracted school closure will impact teaching and learning. In response, we have developed a comprehensive program for home-based continued education for our nation's children. The home-based continued education plan is phased. It involves the use of Flow Study in the first instance and will be followed by the introduction of virtual classrooms using Microsoft Teams in the event of protracted closure. We are mindful that some teachers would need to be better equipped for providing instruction in virtual classrooms. Thus, training for teachers to use Microsoft Teams will begin the week of April 20th, 2020. This will ensure the readiness of the teachers to facilitate online teaching and learning should the second phase of home-based education be implemented. At the Ministry of Education, we are cognizant that regardless of where students' learning is happening, supports must be provided. The Ministry of Education will ensure that schools and by extension teachers are able to provide continuity of education for all students in the most appropriate and accessible ways possible. To ensure continued education for all students in the event of protracted school closure, the ministry has invested in devices and internet connectivity for those students and teachers who were previously identified as not having access to these necessary tools for virtual education. By taking these collective actions, the Ministry of Education is ensuring that core functions of the education system can and will continue should the national COVID-19 mitigation efforts require the further extension of school closure. We are very grateful for the partnerships with Flow, The Cable, and Digicel. These corporate entities have committed their support to enhancing our efforts to ensure that all teachers and students will have access to the necessary online learning platforms for use during the periods of extended closure of schools. In addition to the aforementioned interventions by the Ministry of Education to ensure the continued provision of quality education to students, we have been providing periodic updates and relevant information to school administrators, teachers, parents, and families. Over the past weeks, we have been issuing various communications aimed at providing ongoing guidance to schools and the general public. These have been in the form of frequently asked questions and statements by senior education officials. I am therefore urging the general public, particularly students, teachers, parents, and families, to continually check the Ministry of Education's website, www.education.gov.kn, for updates. I cannot close without publicly registering my heartfelt and profound gratitude to the Ministry of Education teams on both St. Kitts and Nevis for the diligent work invested to ensure the continued education of our children. The federal ministry has worked very closely with the Ministry of Education in Nevis on a coordinated response. Thus, allow me to thank the Administrative Department, the entire Education Planning Division, the Curriculum Development Unit, and the Education Management Information System Unit, the Education Services Department, Education Leadership in Nevis, and the Education Media Unit. Your work is highly valued and deeply appreciated. As our Federation continues to adapt to the changes brought about as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, be assured that the Ministry of Education continues to work to meet the educational needs of all students and their families. More than ever, this novel period has propelled us to deliver on the theme of the Ministries of Education sector plan, Education for All, Embracing Change, Securing the Future. We look forward to the collaboration of all key stakeholders, especially students, teachers, parents, families, communities, and other public and private partners as we strive to ensure that our children receive relevant and quality education. Thank you in anticipation of your support. I am also appealing to all of us to continue to work to ensure the continued health, safety, and well-being of our nation's citizens and residents. We can, by our individual and collective actions, prevent the coronavirus from wreaking havoc on our nation, particularly our people, our nation's most valuable resource. Thus, I urge all of us to follow all the precautionary recommendations and guidelines outlined by your caring government, acting on the advice of the National COVID-19 Task Force. Let us exercise the appropriate hygiene and practice the necessary social and physical distancing to limit the spread of the virus. If we continue to work cooperatively, we can successfully get through this unprecedented phase in our nation's history. Let us all remain safe and continue to pray for God's guidance and direction at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Sean Richards. I now invite Mr. Melvin James, who is Director in the Department of Agriculture in St. Kitts, to speak to us on matters specific to agriculture. Mr. James.
Thank you, Chairman Lesroy, and I greet all listeners, those watching, whether by conventional means or social media, streaming, what have you. A most pleasant afternoon, and it is my pleasure to inform us as it relates to farmers' work hours, the business hours of the Department of Agriculture, and very briefly introduce some elements of the stimulus package to us this afternoon. I begin by going through a letter that the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Hamilton, received from Commissioner of Police Hilary Brandy, and we have also posted this letter in the Farmers Chat, so I believe some of you have seen it. It makes reference to a correspondence he received on the 11th of April, and I will hasten to add this is one of several that even went prior to this occasion. The Commissioner advised that permission has been granted to fishers, crop, and livestock farmers here in St. Kitts to be out during the partial curfew hours from 6 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. in the evening. So on partial lockdown days, essentially the farmers and the fishers can now utilize all of the daylight hours for their activities. And on the full lockdown days, farmers are allowed from 7 in the morning to 9 in the morning, and they're free to return at 4 in the afternoon and leaving at 6. Please be further advised that no more than 2 employees are allowed to be with you as you apply your trade. And you should always have your farmer's ID with you. I went through this very slowly, so I believe we have it. I don't think it may be absolutely necessary to repeat it. Just for me to sincerely thank Honorable Minister Hamilton, who from the very beginning have been working very hard behind the scenes to try and get farmers more time, considering that we need to help with the food security, but also being cognizant of the risks and dangers of being too close and the incidences of COVID. We are happy that at this time, the health fraternity is satisfied that pressures could be relaxed to a certain extent, and that they found it convenient to include us in the extended hours. I ask that farmers continue to be diligent, to take this seriously. Don't use it as a time for anything else but bona fide farming, as we have a lot to do. Please be guided by the instructions, and let us show that we're responsible citizens and that we're out there to produce, and that we will in fact produce and deliver. As it relates to the department's work hours, please note that tomorrow, Friday, the abattoir will be closed. The abattoir will be closed on Friday, but the public market will be open all morning from like 7 right up to about 2 o'clock. We'll have the services of the public market. The Department of Agriculture at Lagreet, we will function in the morning as well, 8 to 1 o'clock. We'll be there selling feed. The feed has been discounted to $25, all categories of feed. We'll also be selling chemicals, crop-related chemicals, and supplies. Chemicals, it means fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, that kind of thing. Fertilizer, things that you need to input to the crop immediately, those will be at half price. We will not be selling any seeds. We did not sell any seeds today. We will not be selling any tomorrow, nor would we be selling the hardware materials like wires and drip lines. I encourage you to try and get your information from official sources, ZIZ, the COVID website, because it's not only the health fraternity that has to battle with fake news. Almost every time some information goes out, there is someone quick to spin and to misinform. For example, I saw some information today which suggests that the department was selling seeds to farmers at full price, and they were giving them away to backyard gardeners. May I say to you, as an old calypso about lies, that is lie. Please be guided by the correct information. I don't want to be always having to inform. I am encouraging us to listen and follow the official sites that give information. So we'll be at the department in the morning, and we'll be selling livestock feed. We'll be selling crop supplies, as just mentioned, main inputs, which we call chemicals, and similar supplies. Those of you who were unable to get any Betical in the past, we will also be open for you to get your free Betical, and you can also purchase other livestock supplies. So please be so informed. I can't speak too much to next week. I shall be back on time to give you some more details. But based on what the Prime Minister said yesterday, it is most likely that we'll be open for business on the 4 business days in the morning. We'd allow for the morning and then the afternoon sessions for the staff to be able themselves to do some shopping. Let me just briefly speak to the stimulus package, which obviously we said we would put on hold until the major restrictions began to ease. And as they're easing at this time, I would want to begin to address our minds to it so that we will be able to have a better idea of what is to come. We had said that we need to look more deeply at feeding ourselves. And this has come against the backdrop of a stimulus package from the government in the amount of $10 million. And this money is to be divided between St. Kitts and Nevis, between the different sectors, fisheries and agriculture. And in the agriculture sector, we, in the parts of the livestock, we will be doing things like purchasing rabbits and giving them out in pairs to homeowners who have that tendency, who have that skill and craft for raising rabbits, and who have the space and the conveniences, so that they would have their own supply of protein right in their backyard without having too many to cause any pollution in the neighborhood. We will be bringing back into production and intensifying broiler farms. Many of the broiler farms in recent times have gone quiet. We will assist them in coming back on stream so that, again, we will have protein sources at hand. Similarly, we said that with our sheep and goat, we will be encouraging good fencing, pasture management, good husbandry, and assisting with synchronized breeding. In other words, having all the ewes come into heat at the same time and being able to increase the number of lambs over a short period of time. As it relates to fisheries, we had said before that the main strategy will be the acquiring of fish aggregating devices. These, we said, are essentially an artificial reef that attracts fish. They will harbor and congregate. It therefore makes it so much easier for them to be caught. And so the fishers will be assisted with the normal inputs that they use, nets and buoys and lines. All of the equipment that they use, they will be able to be assisted. Also, they will be getting fuel at reduced rates, be it through VAT reduction, so that they can ply their trade more frequently and be able to bring in a greater abundance of catch. As it relates to the crops, what is going to happen is that we will have our extension officers engage our farmers. They will call you, they will visit you, and we will be explaining to you that the country is preparing for a larger output from our farmers. The suppliers, the purchasers, the homeowners, they're expecting to see a greater output of cabbages, lettuce, pumpkins, etc. 3 months from now, 4 months from now. And so we will be assisting our farmers with the necessary supplies, be it fertilizer, insecticides, counseling, land preparation. But we're also asking you to commit that, having received this level of support, that 3-4 months down the road, to the best of your ability, you will be delivering. Remember, the homeowners, they're depending on us, they're expecting us. We can't just accept inputs and do nothing. We understand that you're not in control of all of the factors. For example, the weather and pest. But that is understandable. But to the best of your ability, and we will also do our part with these, and so that in the end, we will both come out winners. Let me conclude by saying the full details will be given to you subsequently. This is just to whet your appetite. But I do hope that we have begun to make progress. For one, we have extended time, and so we do hope that this is what we need to begin, and that going forward, it will only get better, and we'll move forward and be able to deliver to the country the results which they so seek. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. I now invite Superintendent Cromwell Henry, Divisional Commander for District A, to address us on matters of law enforcement. But before he comes, I would like to acknowledge the Honorable Vincent Byron, the Chairman of the Disaster Mitigation Council, and our Attorney General among us.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Good afternoon to all who are listening or viewing this broadcast. Today, April 16th, just to update you on some law enforcement activities. To date, we have made 72 arrests, and this covers the period March 28th to April 15th. Someone this morning indicated that they will be confused. They thought the numbers that I call out daily were the numbers that we arrested the day before. So I just want to let you know this is the aggregated amount from March 28th, when we first went into a state of emergency, up to April 15th. That was yesterday. 72 arrests, St. Kitts Nevis. Just to give you a breakdown, in Division A, there were 38 arrests. Division B, 25. And Division C, which is Nevis, 9. And Division A is the Bastille area, Bastille, Cayon, Stapleton, Frigate Bay. Division B is the area from West Farm right around to Lodge. And of course, Division C is the entire Nevis. 48 of the 72 persons have been charged, and 24 has been informed that they will be reported via summons. Just to update you on the renewal of vehicle licenses, the Inland Revenue has indicated that they have been renewing vehicles and driver's licenses, and those licenses that have already been completed, they were delivered to the stations, all the stations around the island, both St. Kitts and Nevis, and so persons can collect their licenses on partial curfew days from the station, the police station within your district. In terms of insurance, we had some questions about whether or not persons can renew, how persons can renew their insurance policies. Some insurance companies have indicated that that is possible online. Nagico, for example, has indicated that you could do the entire process, renew your policy, get your certificate online. You visit nagico.com and complete the process there. National Insurance has indicated that you can pay your premium online using the National Bank Internet Banking portal, and they are working on a way to get your certificate of insurance to you. So those two companies have indicated that they're making it possible for owners of vehicles to renew their certificate of insurance or their insurance policies online. We encourage persons to continue to use the opportunity to have your driver's licenses and your vehicle licenses renewed. Today, April 16th and 17th, are partial curfew days under the regulation. This means that persons are permitted to be out for limited times of the day between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. to conduct essential business. That is, getting food, getting medical supplies, or if you're an essential worker, you can be out conducting your essential duties. However, the country has been zoned into 4 zones, 2 in St. Kitts and 2 in Nevis. Zone 1 in St. Kitts extends from Southeast Peninsula to Lavington, including all of East Bastille. So the area up to 4th Street, up to the roundabout at Taylor's, across the F.T. Williams Highway, and include all of Taylor's Village and areas that encompass the constituency number 1. Zone 2 extends from 4th Street westwards to Parsons Village, and includes St. Peter's. So in other words, it covers Central Bastille, West Bastille, and all of the countryside going west to Parsons Village, and include St. Peter's. Zone 2 would be permitted, persons residing in Zone 2, they will be permitted to be out tomorrow for essential purposes, and we ask that persons living in Zone 1 to remain at your residence. We trust that you would have had sufficient time today to conduct all your businesses, and we ask you to stay at home tomorrow and have persons from Zone 2 be out to conduct their business. The lines today were not as long as we have seen previously. They were much more orderly. Persons were observing the social distance protocols. And so we ask tomorrow that the same thing happen. Again, we ask for the full cooperation of persons living in Zone 1 to stay at home tomorrow and allow persons in Zone 2 to be out. Similarly, in Nevis, I think Zone 3 had their day today. Zone 4 will be out tomorrow, and we ask persons from Zone 3 to remain at home tomorrow. Essential workers, we had made some adjustments to accommodate essential workers. Previously, we had a time slot from 3 to 5 for essential, or 4 to 6 for essential workers. That did not work out too well. So what we have done this time, we provided a second line throughout the entire day for essential workers and senior citizens and differently abled persons. So there were 2 lines, one a regular line and one for essential workers and senior citizens, so that you had the entire day to be in that line and get first preference to enter business establishments. That worked out a little better than the 3 to 5 arrangement, and we would continue with that arrangement tomorrow. Next week, the Prime Minister has announced that there will be 4 partial curfew days, meaning that residents will have an opportunity to be out on these days, Monday and Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, to shop and purchase other essential items. There will be no zoning, meaning all the zones will be free to come out on those days. We just ask that persons observe the physical distancing protocols and wear masks when you are in public spaces. We'll be guided further when new regulations are released on Saturday. The curfew resumes this evening at 7 p.m. and will remain in effect until 6 a.m. tomorrow. We ask all residents to ensure that you complete all your shopping today and be at your residence by 7 p.m. this evening. I've been asked about arrangements for buses. I just want to inform that no new arrangement has been released yet for buses, passenger buses. Under the existing legislation, they are required to only carry 1 person per row, and we are guided by that regulation still. It is expected that when new regulations are released later, the question of what happened to the buses will be addressed in those regulations, so we await for those regulations to see what the changes will be. We have also granted privileges to delivery drivers. You know, some supermarkets have a new line where they allow shoppers to shop online and have their goods delivered to them. We welcome that because that reduces the amount of persons coming into the establishment, and so we encourage that type of activity. And so we've granted permission to drivers for the various services to deliver their goods to the customers around the island Of course, we just ask that you wear uniform, if your company has a uniform, or have some form of identification to satisfy the police that you're working for delivery service. You would only be allowed to do this on partial curfew days between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. That's it for me for now, and I will wait for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Henry. I now invite Dr. Marissa Carty, PRO at the Ministry of Health, to give us the COVID-19 situation report. Dr. Carty.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Pleasant good evening to everyone. As of Thursday, 16th April at 3 p.m., the World Health Organization reports 1,995,983 confirmed cases of COVID-19 globally, with 144,280 deaths. In St. Kitts and Nevis, 243 persons have been tested, with 14 confirmed positive, 199 confirmed negative, and 30 results pending. We have 0 deaths to date. There are currently 0 persons quarantined in a government facility, while 84 persons are quarantined at home. 14 persons remain in isolation, while 608 persons have been released from quarantine. Please be reminded, as you venture out on the partial curfew days, adhere to all safety guidelines, including wearing masks in public, sanitizing your hands regularly, coughing or sneezing into the crook of your elbow or into a rag or tissue and dispose of it appropriately, and practice the physical distancing measures of at least 6 feet between persons. If we work together, we will overcome together. Our national statistics and other COVID-related information can be found on the official website www.covid19.gov.kn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Carty. I now invite Mr. Abdius Samuel, who is the COVID-19 National Task Force Chair, to address us.
Good afternoon all to our viewers, whether on radio, television, or online. Thank you for joining in today again. I want to thank Mr. Williams for the wonderful job that he's doing. But first and foremost, I want to thank you, the general public, for your cooperation and your commitment to supporting the national efforts as we combat the COVID-19 virus. Today, Thursday, 16th April, the situation report from the National Emergency Operations Center is as follows. For the past 48 hours, we have processed a total of 68 calls, 68 311 calls on Wednesday and 96 calls on Thursday. Again, I'm reporting for 48 hours. There were 90 calls for the past 24 hours on St. Kitts, while 6 on Nevis for the 311 hotline. 911 would have processed a total of 83 calls for the past 24 hours. The NEOC would have processed a total of 32 calls, 14 on St. Kitts and 18 in the EOC on Nevis. And these calls are broken down into persons requesting permission to travel during the curfew hours, 5 were health-related, 1 for assistance, and 1 for general information. Yesterday, we were unable to report to you due to the special edition of the COVID-19 briefing. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Hazel Lodge, Chief Medical Officer, and also thank Dr. Cameron Wilkinson for the wonderful job that they did in bringing us information, breaking down a number of misunderstandings that you may have had. And they shed a lot of information into the way forward and the reason for us now reaching that phase of relaxing the curfew days. Now, let us be careful and mindful that is a gradual relaxation. And as they said, if you don't exercise that level of responsibility, then that means that we are going to have to go back to those isolation measures in order for us to continue to contain the virus. Therefore, the ball is in your court. You have to do what you need to do in order to help us continue to fight and contain this virus. I am also informed that solid waste will be opened tomorrow, 17th April, from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. I also received information that the General Post Office will be opened on Thursday 16th and Friday 17th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. The parcel post section of the General Post Office will also be open from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Thursday and Friday 17th. So customers can collect essential items only. The sub-post offices in St. Kitts will also be open on the stated dates and times for the cashing of Social Security checks as well. And this information was given to us by the Postmaster General, Mr. Dario Gill. We have processed several requests for repatriation flights, and today one repatriation flight took place on the island of Nevis via San Juan, and tomorrow there will be 2 repatriation flights out of Nevis as well via San Juan onwards to the United States. Persons interested in those repatriation flights who are U.S. citizens, you are advised to contact Ms. K. Bass, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also to contact the U.S. Embassy in Bridgetown, Barbados. I want to take this opportunity to commend and acknowledge Destiny International, Pastor Destiny International Church, Pastor Steve Huggins, who would have donated $500 in cash to support the national response efforts. Thank you, Pastor Huggins, and to your church. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Heston Ham of T&A Security, who has donated $5,000 to the Ministry of Health to support their efforts. Subsequently, his son, Mr. Delon Ham of Vinyl Arts, also donated $1,000 to the Ministry of Health. And again, those citizens, whether corporate or otherwise, who are stepping up to the plate, to you we say thank you. One of the things that we have seen a lot is the patriotic spirit that has risen from our citizens, whether home and abroad, to support all of us. This whole inclusive effort to fight COVID-19, I think is commendable, very commendable. I want to pause here just to give an opportunity to one of our former youth ambassadors. She's studying in Jamaica. She called me up yesterday. She was the first president for our St. Kitts Nevis Comprehensive Disaster Management Youth Ambassadors. And as a former president, she has stepped up to the plate, and she wishes to make a small presentation and donation to the fight against the COVID-19. Ms. Shajane Guns.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel.
Good afternoon, and a very special blessing to all our frontline workers, and indeed all our citizens who are collectively experiencing what is perhaps the most challenging era of our modern day history. As introduced by Mr. Samuel, my name is Shajine Gums. I am here today to represent a small travel and tour company known in St. Kitts as Up to the Time Tours. Today, I am standing in for the owner and manager, my dad, Mr. Juni Gums. And though we are a very small company that provides shuttle services and tours around St. Kitts, we felt it was important for us to contribute to the national effort to combat this dreaded disease that has already killed thousands worldwide. And though we here in St. Kitts remain fortunate to have not yet suffered any loss of life, it does not mean that our struggle isn't real. It also does not suggest that the fight is over and that more resources are not needed. They are. Because we at Up to the Time Tours recognize the ongoing battle against the coronavirus will be a long and arduous one, we were easily moved to play our small part in offering a token financial contribution of $800. This is to be used as deemed most appropriate by the NEOC or other relevant body to assist in covering whatever little expenses that may be possible from such a small but generous donation. My dad, and in fact the entire staff at Up to the Time Tours, wish that we had the ability to give more. However, as we are aware that the tourism sector has been one of the hardest hit, and unfortunately, the demand and appetite for tours do not exist. Never mind that reality. We want to encourage everyone to play their part because success will come from many small packages of support, and we should never think that COVID-19 will be defeated from only large single contributions. It takes a collective effort. It pleases me to now present this check for $800 to Mr. Abdir Samuel, Chair of the COVID-19 National Task Force and the National Disaster Coordinator, to aid your efforts.
Thank you, Ms. Gum, for any donation coming from small businesses just as great as any other. I just want to also inform you today that the COVID-19 task force members, a few members, met with the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, met with also the Deputy Labor Commissioner, and also met with members of the Social Security, where we are developing we are bringing together a compliance task force. This compliance task force will be responsible for enforcing a number of social distancing protocols and physical distancing protocols and other measures. We had a very fruitful meeting today. The meeting looked at some of the protocols. It looked at some of the business places that we can also deem as non-essential that can be opened during the next few days of gradual relaxation from the curfew. And I can report to you that everyone is somewhat happy and excited to see the way forward. The contributions were very good. I was satisfied. All parties are satisfied, and that we are working together collaboratively in order to start this gradual process. Let us not lose focus and feel like we have already overcome. We have not. The doctors were very cautious in using the word gradual, meaning that you have a level of responsibility to exercise still. Let us not become complacent and drop the ball and become the epicenter of the Caribbean. That is not acceptable. That is not our objective. Our objective is to become successful in a good order so that we can overcome this hump. We have seen the successes. 23 results, we received 1 positive. 12 results that were reported, we received 2 positive. But we must count the negatives. You're talking about 10 negatives and 22 negatives. We are doing well, and we will have to continue, but you have to do your part. I'm appealing to the general public. When you go out there to shop, it's not a time for you to lime. I saw that a lot today. Persons were still by small shops congregating. I saw people drinking rum and doing these things. Let us not defeat the purpose. We don't need that. You were given the opportunity to get your essentials. So we need to continue on that path. We had 7 days of being on total lockdown. The gains made cannot be lost in just half of a morning. Let us support the security forces in what they are trying to do. Let us protect the vulnerable. Let us protect our elders. Again, we are working hard and you have to pull your part. So I'm appealing again to you, to do your part. Drinking rum, associating with where we don't need to, or doing other activities that can harm the progress that we have made is not necessary at this time. So again, let us support, let us do our part. Make sure that you support the national process by exercising the social distancing, physical distancing protocols, ensuring that you carry out those hygiene practices, continue to boost your immune system. It's important, it's critical, and ensure that you do everything necessary in remaining vigilant against this pandemic. So therefore, again, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for being cooperative. We have to become a more disciplined society if we want to be successful. So I was also nudged to highlight that Pioneer Pizza has been supporting the security forces, and I want to thank Pioneer Pizza for looking after the security forces, especially in District B. It's a young business. This youngster is a young entrepreneur, and he has decided that he needs to contribute to the national efforts, and he sees that the security forces are working overtime, and sometimes they cannot find somewhere to get something to eat, and he has decided that he makes pizza, and the best way that he can contribute is to support the security forces so that they can continue to babysit us. So thank you again to Pioneer Pizza, and I want to again thank the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. I want to thank Mr. Paul Quealy at Consumer Affairs for joining the meeting on short notice, and also I want to thank Ms. Charlene Bory at Social Security for the wonderful contributions that they made to the meeting today. And this compliance task force will be spearheaded by Ms. Mercelyn Hughes, Chief Immigration Officer. She has an extensive background in policing. And when this task force is launched to ensure that business places are compliant with social distancing and other measures, I am hopeful that you will give them your support. So thank you, and look forward that we are going to continue this fight, and we are going to continue supporting all efforts to safeguard the citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. So thank you, and Mr. Williams, I hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel, and equally thank you, Ms. Gums. We will now have the questions from the media and others. These questions come from Sugar City FM 90.3. Information is circulating from the Caribbean Examination Council about what its plans is for exams this year. But nothing is being said about the test of standards for the grade 6 children of the Federation. Can any respective agent let us know what arrangements are made for test of standard this year, since we are not sure when school will reopen? Question 2. The Prime Minister announced some time back that electricity bill payments would be deferred for 3 months. Can this be made a little clearer? For instance, if we get deferred for February, March, and April, does this mean that at the end of May, we still have to back pay February, March, and April's bills? Or would those 3 months be removed from our electricity balance and we start afresh from May? And the third question, last week Friday, I asked the question, if you knew anything about 5G and the implications on our health as it relates to the coronavirus. Referring to Dr. Wilkinson, says that you mentioned you would get back to me on Tuesday. Did you get to research anything as yet? And if so, could you let us know, please?
Thank you for that question. And as promised, I researched it, and so I'm happy that you asked. Now, what is 5G? 5G is the latest mobile technology that delivers faster mobile data speed. There is no scientific or technological proof connecting 5G technology with the spread of the coronavirus. Viruses cannot travel on radio waves or mobile networks. COVID-19 is spread in many countries that do not have 5G mobile networks. And in speaking to the 2 major networks here in St. Kitts, I can tell you that they say neither Flow nor Digicel has deployed any 5G infrastructure on their mobile towers in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so without having 5G here in St. Kitts, we do have COVID-19, which means that it is not related to 5G. COVID-19 is spread, as we've said, through respiratory droplets when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or speaks. People can also be infected by touching a contaminated surface and then placing their hands in their eyes or mouth. And what I'm hoping, and I'm asking the various media outlets to make sure that they get this out so that this information can be disseminated, because education is power, and once we know about the information, we can be informed. The World Health Organization, on their website, they have it on the myths, and this is one of the myths that is being circulated. There is an infodemic that is occurring here, and we have good information and bad information, and we need to make sure that we avoid these myths and stick to the facts and the truth. Thank you.
On the question as to what the Ministry of Education intends to do relative to the test of standards, I can say that on Monday of next week, there is a meeting being held with ministry officials to make a determination on the test of standards. Therefore, at this particular point in time, there is no definitive decision on that. Interestingly, it was just this morning that I was looking at CNN, and there was a conversation about the SATs, which is also a standardized test, which persons would take upon entrance to universities to pursue undergraduate studies. It was noted that some universities are actually looking at using the various grades and other factors such as students' participation in community service, essays, etc., to make a determination as to the placement or acceptance of those students into universities. I say that to say to parents that even if a decision is taken not to have the test of standards, there are other means that the Ministry of Education will look at in determining the placement of students in various classes. As we have said over and over again, the situation is still very fluid, and so not all decisions will be made at the same point in time.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. The question was whether bills for SCELEC, which have been deferred for some 3 months, will be wiped clean. What I will say is that that would be a decision that would have to be made by SCELEC or by the cabinet, but it would require a significant subsidy if such a thing was to happen. The intention would have been, when someone defers a bill, is that it is spread over a certain amount of time, and that arrangements can be made with the electricity department to be able to have a deferment plan so that you can spread your bills over time. Once a decision is made by the management of the company, to be able to know what type of arrangements can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering those questions. This question is from Sugar City FM 90.3. During the last partial curfew, where the Federation was split into zones, Zone 1 was allowed to go and shop first, leaving only a limited set of supplies for Zone 2, who had to shop the next day. Why is it that Zone 2 is not given a chance to shop first this time around? Or why not put a break in between the 2 days that the shops can restock for the Zone 2 shoppers? This question is for the Deputy Prime Minister. What if students already had a username for Flow Study and have been actively using the platform previously? Would their progress be transferred to this new username? This one is for Mr. James. I am interested in becoming a farmer, and I have already applied to the department over 2 years now. At that time, I was told there was no land available. Please advise me on what I need to do now. This one is from Annalicia Daniel Blake, Sugar City 90.3. Has any advice or even assistance been given to any of the private schools in terms of the online education and the plan going forward, since they also play a part in educating our Federation's children? So there are 2 for Deputy Prime Minister, 1 for Mr. James, and the 1 for the shopping. Who will take that? Mr. Samuel?
Thank you questioner, inquirer. I had taken a decision, sought the support of the ministry, that we should be careful about the way we distribute lands going forward, and that we should encourage persons to, especially persons who really have a clear picture in their minds about a business approach. I think we want to welcome everyone, and certainly in terms of your application, you can call us up. Our next working day is tomorrow. We can look at your application. What we want to encourage is for people to actually submit a business plan which shows that they have a clear business model in mind. We've had the misfortune of a lot of persons in the past asking about lands, and having received the lands, they have gone idle. You look around, you see a lot of grass everywhere. You might be surprised that almost all of those lands have been assigned to farmers. And persons have been just too many. Persons have been operating at the subsistent level. And we recognize that if we're going to move from a state of just like producing 15 to 20% of our needs, then we must have people who are well organized. And we're trying to vet. And so we're asking that there's a proper business plan, well executed, looking at how you're going to have the business financed, your markets, your layout, all of that, and not depend entirely on government. We want our farmers to have a similar business approach as we see in the normal private sector, because farming too is supposed to be a private-led business. So I would want to be excited and hope that that's your intentions. Call us up, let's talk it over, especially at this time where we need persons who can really run with the business, and we'll be more than happy to accommodate you, and others perhaps could learn from you, because indeed we need to feed ourselves. But we can't, what we need to understand is that if we're cultivating the soil and we're not doing a good job, it is similar to wasting water. I think the water department has done a good job in conveying to us how important it is that we don't waste water. Similarly, when we cultivate the soil in the inappropriate way, we're wasting the soil, and it's worse than wasting water, because I understand that water recycles itself about 3 to 6 years. But when you lose a cubic inch of soil, you will never regain it in our lifetime, because it takes about 1 million years to be generated. So please be so guided. Thank you.
Regarding the shopping and the zones, there is no disparity. Every time that there is a pause within the shopping days, I am in constant dialogue with all the suppliers. Very much so. And I can tell you that they do restock all the shops with the same products, and they ensure that you have all the necessary products available, just like they had it for every zone, in terms of providing you with the opportunity to access the product. So there is no disparity. The same products zone 1 would have gotten, the same products zone 2 will get. So there is no challenge when it comes to that. I can assure you that discussions happen at the end of each shopping day. So there is no worries about shopping zone 1, shopping zone 2 getting different services. However, your concern is noted, and we will basically process it, but there is no disparity.
On the question as to whether or not a student who already has a Flow username and password will be able to have that information transferred, we have made the necessary provisions for such. In speaking with the persons from the education unit, the CDU, those persons have indicated that will not be a problem, so that those students will not lose the benefit of work that the student already completed. The Ministry of Education, before the closure of schools, had actually done quite a bit of work in terms of preparing for this particular point in time. We collaborated with all of the public and private schools in terms of getting the necessary data that we needed to guide our actions going forward. As such, the private schools were asked to submit information, and that information included whether or not students already have access to internet, whether or not students have access to devices that can be used for virtual education. We are in receipt of that information. We have already ordered devices based on the information which came back to the Ministry of Education. As such, the answer is yes, that provisions have been made for students from private schools. Let me state, though, that we would have ordered devices based on the information that came back, and we went so far as to ensure that we ordered more than the amount which was actually stated, because we figured that some students may not have provided accurate information. So we do have extras, and we are hoping that we will be able to meet the needs of all of our students. We are in the process of negotiating with Flow, the cable, and Digicel in terms of ensuring that the students have access to the internet in their homes. As such, is the intention of the ministry, one, to provide mobile data at least for the first month, and then to ensure that all homes are connected with service within the necessary time period to allow us to move to virtual education if indeed there is a need for such.
Thank you very much. These questions are for Dr. Wilkinson. 2 questions for Dr. Wilkinson. We have heard that we should gargle with salt water, as it is an antiseptic and will kill the virus if it is at the back of our throats. Can we benefit similarly from a nasal saline wash, or could it be harmful? And the second question is asking for a clarification in terms of the use of masks and if the virus is airborne. Dr. Wilkinson.
Thank you very much. I'll address the saline, and at the same time just speak about a number of other myths so that we can dispel all of them in one sitting. So there is no evidence that regular rinsing of the nose with saline protects against corona. With the common cold, sometimes rinsing the nose or the mouth with saline can give you some symptomatic relief, and there's limited evidence to suggest that some persons feel better with the common cold when they do that. But definitely, it does not cure the coronavirus, and so using that is not going to help in any way. There are some other myths that I want to dispel. For example, some of them that are circulating: if you expose yourself to the sun, it can kill the virus. That is not necessarily so. If you can hold your breath for a long time, it suggests that you don't have the virus in your lungs. That is not so. That drinking alcohol can kill the virus. No, when we speak about using alcohol, we're talking about putting it on your hands, but not inside your body. And so drinking alcohol, I heard my friend speaking about people who were drinking today. That's probably why they were doing that. It does not cure. Some persons think that it is not transmitted in hot or humid climates. We live in a hot climate, humid climate, and it's being transmitted in these regions, and so that is not so. There's a myth out there that if you take a hot bath, that can kill the virus, and the hotter the bath, the more effective it is. The hotter the bath, the more you risk yourself being burnt, and it would not help. There are myths out there that the virus is transmitted by mosquitoes. It is not transmitted by mosquitoes. So if you get bitten by a mosquito in a neighborhood where you know someone is quarantined or isolated, that's not going to increase your risk. We've seen things even on the internet about the hair dryers, and putting a hair dryer, blow it up your nose will kill the virus. That is not so. That is dangerous. Some persons have information out there about exposing yourself to ultraviolet light. That will help. Or spraying your entire body down with alcohol or chlorine. Those are myths. There are some stuff like taking garlic. Garlic is an antimicrobial. It has antimicrobial properties, and you can use those things, fruits and vegetables, to boost your immune system, but it does not cure the virus. Now, as it relates to the mask, and you said they wanted clarification on the mask, well, it is advised that masks are used in public places, and the mask is really to protect persons from you if you happen to be infected. Because when we cough, sneeze, or even speak, droplets come out, and these droplets can travel in the air with the virus. The virus itself is not airborne, but these droplets are heavy enough so that when gravity works on it, it falls to the ground. And so they tend to travel at least 1 meter or 3 feet. And so for security reasons, we emphasize social distancing, stand at least 6 feet from someone. So even if a droplet came out, it will fall to the ground and not enter into your respiratory system. And as it relates to mask also, we said that a mask is not for everyone, because it should not be placed on a child below the age of 2, someone who is in any way will not be able to remove the mask if, for example, they were suffocating. And so these are persons who, until we get the virus under control, if they're going to be in a public space where they need to be close to persons, they should try to avoid that. So if you're going into an overcrowded supermarket or any overcrowded space, it's best that you not take a child there. It's best that you not take someone who is confined to a wheelchair, who is paralyzed and can't move their hands to take the mask off if they happen to be suffocating. And it doesn't mean that is every single person who you see outside has to wear a mask, because if, for example, I am sitting on the beach by myself looking at the Atlantic Ocean and there's no one around me, I have no reason to have a mask on. The mask is intended to prevent the spread of the disease in crowded spaces. So if you're going into a supermarket, any public spaces, etc., that's when you wear the mask. Somebody can be driving in their car by themselves without a mask. Somebody can be seated on their veranda relaxing without a mask, because I've been getting a lot of calls, as if I'm a police and I'm not a police, about people seeing persons without a mask on, as if, well, I need to call the police to get these persons arrested. So let's be clear as to when to wear a mask and when not to wear a mask. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. This is our last question for today. For the post office opening, is the selling of stamps considered essential? Stamps are needed for some legal documents, and the post office has not been selling stamps during the partial curfew days. Can this be addressed? Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Today and tomorrow will be the last 2 partial curfews in relation to the current regulations under the Emergency Powers Act. We expect that tomorrow will be gazetted a new set of regulations that will go from Saturday coming to next week Saturday. To date, the regulations that we have had required some very limited government offices to be open. As we go forward next week, and there is a gradual relaxation of the restrictions, we will find that more and more businesses that had not been considered essential may well be now allowed to open their doors to assist us as we get back into normal living. Remember, the advice from our medical professionals is that we must continue to consider social distancing to contain any transmission of COVID. That is why we have had the curfews, the lockdowns. Because if you're at home, you're socially distanced and physically distanced from others. But we now believe that there can be a gradual release back open. I say that to say that the General Post Office next week may well be one of those offices that will gradually be opened to allow people to have gradual start of their business. And you're right, legal documents require stamps. Other documents require stamps. It may not be as urgent today that you have a passport, for instance, because our borders are still closed, and so travel may not be possible. But to get a passport, you need stamps. To get a police record, you need stamps. So stamps is still, for many of our official services, government services, stamps are still required. And so stamps will be one of those services that we will have to relax so you can get access to that. But remember, once we go to any government office, any private office, business office, we have to still practice social distancing. Dr. Wilkinson was very clear. Droplets can travel up to 3 feet. So we said, give yourself 6 feet. We each have a personal responsibility to understand about our surroundings. We can start to go out to other businesses and other services, but always be conscious that each of us have an individual responsibility of our surroundings so that we do not spread or contract any of these things. Before I end, Mr. Williams, I just want to speak to one or two disturbing issues that we have had that the Emergency Operating Center, NEOC, has observed. And one of them has been prank calls to 311. We consider this very serious. The 311 is a hotline for emergencies, for those who may require assistance. The 311 is a line that gives explanations and assistance to those who would require assistance. And it is beyond the pale. It's unacceptable for those who do not have any proper business or proper questions to try to give prank calls to the 311 hotline. This must stop. This must be terminated immediately. What I will say is that these calls will be monitored and, if necessary, traced. If anyone wants to continue to give false information or to undermine our 311 hotline, it is doing a service for you and for all of us, and should be taken very seriously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney General. This is not the time for prank. Tomorrow there is an emergency sitting of the Parliament at 10 a.m. tomorrow, Friday the 17th of April. You are invited to tune in to Parliament tomorrow at 10 a.m. for an emergency sitting. Thank you very much to the media who posed their questions today and others who posed their questions. I hope that they were adequately answered. I want to thank Mrs. Christmas Jacobs, who provides each day for us sign language. She has been very dedicated and hardworking in providing this service, and we appreciate the service she does very much. I would like to thank the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Sean K. Richards, for addressing us with respect to matters pertaining to the Ministry of Education. Mr. Melvin James, for addressing us with respect to matters pertaining to agriculture and food security. Superintendent Cromwell Henry, for matters pertaining to the implementation of the state of emergency in law enforcement. Dr. Carty, for providing us with the St. Kitts and Nevis COVID-19 situation report. Mr. Abdias Samuel, Chair of the COVID-19 National Task Force, for reminding us that even though some of the restrictions have been eased, that we still have a personal responsibility, an individual responsibility to ensure that we keep safe and that we ensure that others are safe. And Ms. Shajoune Gums, for her donation today to the cause. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. And tomorrow at 5, we will be back for another daily briefing. Thank you very much.